for France. But of course, all eyes, I guess, are going to be on Drugin and Duncan Free for Australia, the reigning World champions. So let's meet the French over on the far side. Perron and Cadeau, a pretty awesome sprint to qualify yesterday for this final. And then next to them in lane number 2, Nathan Twaddle and George Bridgewater, who were silver medalists last year and the year before, but world champions the year before that in Gifu. And here are, well, very much the partnership to beat. Drugin and Duncan Free for Australia, the world champions for the past 2 seasons. In lane 4, representing Canada, Dave Calder and Scott Franson. Dave Calder, you might remember, was in the Canadian boat that went offline at the Olympics and went into New Zealand. Nothing wrong with their rowing yesterday. And China, Wu Lin and Zhang Shunyin. And they were actually only half a boat length yesterday in the semi-finals behind Gin and Free. So it'll be interesting to see, now this is a race for real, how tough they can be and how hard they can push them. And Ramon Di Clemente and Sean Keeler
is as tough this year as getting into the final in a normal Olympic regatta.
So quickly running down on the far side, France in lane 1, New Zealand 2 from the top, then Australia, Canada, China, closest to you, South Africa, the final of the men's pairs. Pretty smart start there by the Canadians in lane 4, 3 from the bottom of your picture.
That's Scott Franson in the stroke seat on the left of that pair. They're out in front now and they got off very cleanly, and you know, they haven't touched the water since they left. That's absolutely smooth. Not a single ripple are they causing. Just whack in and move that boat, and look, they've got half a length on the field already. Very exciting start by them.
Now Drugin and Duncan Free, they tend to take the first quarter to find their rhythm and then become generally irresistible.
That's right. That's not a bad call. And you know, Franson and Calder are in the position that Bridgewater and Twaddle were in this time last year. They're leading the known main man crew in the race, and they're already beginning to wonder how long they can hang on.
So just on the near side, South Africa, you can see China, the yellow and red vests of Wu and Zhang, and right on the far side on the regatta course, the French here, Perron and Laurent Cadeau, who together originally back in the Olympics they were in the French 8, but more recently last year they finished in a decent 4th.
Yes, they did. And yesterday, as you said, they got a hell of a wriggle on at the end to come through and qualify for this thing. This crew, absolutely, it has absolute speed rather. Whether it can keep it up over the whole of 2,000 metres or has a burst which is either early or late, and that's all, we don't quite know. But all the French crews are on really good form here. Well, there we have it. The
South Africans in foreground.
The new boy in the stroke seat,
Sean Keeling. Interesting to see whether they can produce that sort of sprint, because they also had to put in a monumental effort to make sure they got into this final.
There we see Canada at 39, but rowing a very short stroke. You can see Scott Franson, who's not a particularly tall man anyway, coming to just halfway forward really, and it's tapping along at 39.40 all the way, and it's actually rather an effective style.
Canadians coached, of course, the men by Mike Spracklin, and they're all based out in Victoria, British Columbia.
Yes, indeed. In fact, this pair are the guys who didn't get in the 8. Scott Franson made a really good push for the 8, as did Dave Calder, and they're in the pair as compensation for not being in the 8, and they're leading this race at 750 metres gone.
And, these two Frenchmen on the far side, what makes it, sort of more impressive is, as you said, the progress that the French seem to have made in preparation for Lucerne.
It's a question for all of these national teams of how much you let the foot off the accelerator in the run-up to a regatta like this. They've got to train all summer. It's part of a super compensation cycle, which is culminating in Beijing, and that's what they're really interested in, is the taper down to Beijing. So you let foot off the pedal of training only a little bit for these World Cup regattas, and if they stopped training hard, really hard, a couple of days earlier than everybody else did, then they've got that much more juice. And there are 2 or 3 crews here who say, we're not rowing badly, we're just feeling really tired. And that's universal across teams. You find people who haven't quite given themselves enough taper for this regatta. That's Bridgewater in camera now. You can see at 6'8" why he's such a powerful oarsman, and why that pair, that New Zealand pair, is got the record it's got of 1 gold and 2 silver medals.
South Africa trailing at the moment, but things in this third quarter as they go into past the boat park there, you can see Canada, and all the action really is Canada and to their right. Nothing happening much from China or South Africa. 39 strokes a minute here for this partnership.
Still at 39, but it's quite short and tappy, and what you wonder is what they'll do if the Australians or the New Zealanders, whoever, gives them a really hard time in the last 500. They haven't got a lot to do if you're already at 39 and have been over the whole 2,000 metres, because they can't get any shorter and they can't get any more powerful unless they've been saving some juice up. But this method of rowing, quite unlike the rest of the Canadian team, which tends still to sit back as it was taught by Mike Sprackton, you can see that they're rowing short forward and short back, and they've got lengths of open water, and actually it's going to be very hard for anybody, even of the status of Free and Ginn, to get back onto this Canada crew. That's a big lead with 500 metres to go.
Yes, and essentially these two are the chosen pair. As you said, they contested places for the 8. That didn't happen. And this sort of performance may well seal their positions.
They're not rowing in the style of the 8, and it could be that they're not in the 8 because they don't conform to the style, rather than that they're not good enough athletes, because actually this performance is pretty hot.
Now the Australians have gone through Nathan Twaddle and George Bridgewater and are now second, New Zealand third, France fourth, then China and South Africa, and now they're really moving on, and the New Zealanders have sprinted again and in fact regained second place. It was while we were looking at the Canadians that actually happened. And he is closing. Just having a look at the New Zealanders on the far side, and you sense, do you think Australia have got something here, Ginn and Free?
I don't think they have. I think they've got their timing wrong for this race. Don't worry, they're not written off. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is interesting is whether New Zealand, coming back on Canada now, can get there in front, because New Zealand have got the bit between their teeth. Canada, as we've already seen, are right up on the ceiling. And can New Zealand increase the pace? Bridgewater shortened right up. He's as short as Franson now, and he's closing on Canada as they come into the last 50 metres. Canada will hold on, but only just. They've kept it up the whole way. There's 39 strokes to the minute. New Zealand in second place, and Australia looking a bit flagging in third place, with France in fourth. And as we come to the line now, China in fifth, and South Africa close up on China in sixth place.
Yeah, very interesting race there. And what have we learnt?
A gauntlet was taken off and thrown in the water for others to pick up. That's what we've learned. Canada, we're here. Scott Franson was talking yesterday very modestly, not making a big brouhaha about this, but clearly he had a race plan, and it was to get out in front and just tap along. There was no big juice. You see an athlete as big as George Bridgewater really levers the boat along. That's Scott Franson on the left there. Scrubby red beard, and Dave Calder, his bowman, on the right, and they don't even look knackered, do they?
No, I mean, they've actually done the job extremely well, and they've certainly positioned themselves to be right there and worthy of their air tickets to Beijing, I would think, and given both the Australians and the New Zealanders something to think about.
Oh, they're worthy of their air tickets. The question is whether they'll have extra baggage on the way back in the way of medals, because that's these are the guys who didn't make the 8. But they're rowing in a completely un-Canadian way. They're rowing like lightweights almost, which they, relative to some of the big guys around, they are. And they're just tapping it along, sitting up, not letting it get heavy on them at all, keeping it up at 39 strokes a minute. Brilliant stuff.